Hey, Donald. Bobby Graham here. We met this past weekend at Pinyon in Ojai. I was with my wife and our son, 6-month-old son. It was great meeting you. And, I've been thinking about our conversation about what you're looking for in an attorney for Gilga, someone who's creative and can help effectuate what Gilga is trying to do, no matter, what the project is. And I think I'm the right person for a couple of reasons. First, I can build out the legal team, and whether that's like the processes, whether that's, the templates to make sure that when you want to do something, you have a response or a plan to follow so that you're legally protected. Um, Also, the way that I've been trained in working with, C-suites and in tech is it's not about saying no. It's really about saying yes to an idea, but then having your caveat. So it's yes, but, or yes, and, or let's figure out how to tweak that a little bit to be able to stay within the law. I can talk to you about, the major things that I've worked on, but I'll save that for a phone call. Really, my role would be to listen to what Gilga is trying to do and then effectuate it through, the cleanest path possible in the law. And so we talked about two things and really was like, hey, who's Nathan for you as attorney? Like, how did they get away with this? And one, he worked with Comedy Central's legal team on a lot of this stuff. So he had a team of lawyers. And then the other thing that we talked about was, how to use AI in this day and age to basically, do whatever you want with it. And so I'll talk about both really quickly. First with Nathan for you. The premise was interviewing small business owners and giving business advice because he had a master's or an MBA from a university in Canada, and all that was true. And so we blended nonfiction with fiction. And really, he'd find these small business owners that were willing to be interviewed and take this business advice. But they signed contracts, right? They signed waivers, releases of liability, and then IP licenses so that Nathan for you could not just use the name and likeness and the trademarks and copyrights of the businesses, but also of the individuals that were shown up and were on camera. And everyone who showed up was paid a nominal fee, whether that's like minimum wage or whatever the daily rate is for the union. And then he did hire actors to basically come in. And so this is where the fiction, nonfiction blending comes in to help move that forward. And so you have that hiring there that happened and the payment that happened with those actors. But really what Nathan for you was kind of best known for, like when I think of the crazy thing that he did within the law was the parody of Starbucks with Dumb Starbucks. And so what they did here, and I'm sure you're aware, is like they found a very narrow way to basically parody Starbucks by changing just enough of the name and logo from Starbucks by calling it Dumb Starbucks Coffee to be able to not confuse consumers as to Starbucks being affiliated with Dumb Starbucks and vice versa, as well as falling within the parody exception to IP infringement under the federal law. And so a few things there. One, Nathan for you was fully backed by Comedy Central at the time and their legal team. But also I'm sure that he had like an LLC for Dumb Starbucks. So when the cease and desist letter came from Starbucks, it went to an LLC that they were able to quickly fold up and have go out of business. So Starbucks really didn't have anyone to sue there, right? Also, Dumb Starbucks opened up on a Friday night after the federal courts were closed. And if they were smart, they would have done it over a 3-day weekend to give them another 24 hours. But by doing so, there was no way for Starbucks to file a lawsuit against them and get an emergency injunction to shut them down. So they had at least 48, probably 72 hours to basically operate Dumb Starbucks, which meant they were able to shoot all their content, put out the press releases, have it go viral on social media, have people show up and really blow it up. And so like that next Monday or Tuesday, the health department shut down Dumb Starbucks because they didn't have any permits. And so they knew this was going to happen. And their argument was to the county was, hey, Dumb Starbucks is an art gallery. We're not a coffee shop. The art that we're selling is coffee, but we don't need a health permit to be able to operate an art gallery. Obviously, that didn't work, but it's funny, and humorous that they had their legal argument for that. And then when the cease and desist letter came from Starbucks, they were already shut down. So there was nothing for Starbucks to actually take to the courts. This is all just great, meticulous planning to make sure that when, this opened, they knew what was going to happen. And if they needed to shut down sooner, they could to avoid an actual lawsuit. Thankfully, we also have a lot of examples in society over like what parody is and what that parody exception is to IP infringement. And I don't know if you're familiar with Ron English, but he's, a huge street artist from like the early 2000s to now. And, he's made fun of McDonald's and Ronald McDonald and Disney and Mickey Mouse, and he's gotten away with it through this parody exception. And so what he's done is he's really, had a legal team basically craft a response to any cease and desist letters that lists about 20 court cases that shows, hey, I'm not actually infringing upon your IP. This is the parody exception. And what I've done here follows the same facts as these 20 different cases. And so that's something we can easily set up is for each idea that maybe there's a parody exception for, we can proactively go through that and make sure that if there's going to be a cease and desist letter coming or a lawsuit, you're able to quickly respond to it and show, hey, we fall underneath this exception. So here's the image of Ronald McDonald who ate too much McDonald's. And then as you come down, you can also see, the Mickey Mouse thing where basically, he got a cease and desist from Disney, and he was able to push back on that. And that's Disney. They're super litigious. And so the last thing is you can use all of this to basically do your own creative campaigns, right? Like you're looking for someone who's creative. I did this about 10 years ago. I went and got about 200 of these car toppers from Jack in the Box. And then I printed on the back, different statements, different facts about how heart disease was the #1 killer of Americans. And, fast food was the #1 contributor to heart disease in Americans. And basically, brought them down to the point of like you eating at Jack in a Box is contributing to your death directly. So there's fun ways that you can use parody, in different art campaigns. And so lastly, I'll stop sharing my screen here. For AI, really it's about having like a commercial license for the content that you're generating, and that'll give you the rights to basically use that in a commercial way. The other thing to really watch out for is like the name and likeness of people that may be in, the content you're generating, making sure that you have those licenses, you have contracts in place with those people. And if not, really making sure that it falls into like a parody example of like, a political figure. And a fun thing that I've talked about with some friends is, the rise of deepfakes. And you can have like a mini game show where, you go out on the street and you show people, 2 different videos, one of Donald Trump, saying something that's real, it's a real recording, and another that's a deep fake of him saying something, and having them try and guess what is the real statement and what's not. And of course, you could always game it so that there's 2 real statements to show people in the audience just how ridiculous some of the things that he says is. And that would be really topical to, the elections coming up. The last thing is I think like you could also do things where you have multiple people go and do different, parodies of things and then showing how the law actually treats them differently based on maybe where they live, California versus Alabama, or based on like their heritage, if they're Black versus white, and then be able to show how America treats people differently under the same set of laws, under those different things. It could be, another piece of art underneath whatever the campaign is. But that's everything that I have to say. Would love to talk more about, the structure of what I would bring to Gilga, but really wanted to follow up on our conversation and show you that can quickly turn around, the research to be able to effectuate whatever it is Gilga wants to do. Again, Bobby Graham, I can be reached at 916-833-3903. I'm based here in Ojai, and my email is robertmcdgraham@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing back from someone. Thanks.